The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people are evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spend a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. Still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, my group would just jump in and help out. It was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
We are the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute, HVERI for short. A lot of people know us from the 2018 eruption of Kilauea in the Lower East Rift Zone. Working under Hawaii Tracker on the Facebook group. Since then, we've been trying to carry on and take the lessons, the hard lessons that were learned during that eruption and try and prepare for the next major disaster that comes to our island.
Yeah, and so we do that through two different programs. One is volcano education, and the other part is digital resilience, which we address through online groups on social media. So the way the two programs work together is that the social media networks end up being a distribution pathway for all the information. And having that network in place means we can provide more than just volcano education, but any other preparedness information as well.
What we were working for really came about in the Mauna Loa eruption in 2022. Within hours of that eruption starting, we had the mayor, Mitch Roth, we had USGS HVO Ken Hahn on the stream trying to help flush out a little bit of the ongoing because it's so new. It's completely different from our previous major eruption, which was 2018.
One of the things that Talmadge and I were talking about was how do we deal with social media? It was something we needed to figure out and get right. Our job is to get information to the public and make sure that the public get it as well as possible and as correctly as possible. When Philip and Dane started coming to and live streaming the meetings, it was great because we were reaching more people than we normally would. So when the eruption actually happened, we had this relationship. The interviews we did during the eruption, the most fun ones were the ones with Philip and Dave because they were more relaxed, and we knew we were getting to the local community, and people were asking questions. So those were the best. I think I just want to really give a shout out to those guys and how we worked as a team on this eruption. It really worked out well, and we got to a lot of people we wouldn't have normally gotten.
Aloha, everyone. I'm geologist Philip Ong, here with Mr. Dane DuPont from the nonprofit HVERI, the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute. And today we also have Lou, our producer up in the top corner, also from HVERI. Today is Monday, September 16th, 2024. We are coming to you not on our regular schedule because there has been an unexpected very brief, very small footprint eruption that happened on Kilauea's East Rift last night. So that's what we'll talk about today. How are you guys doing, Lou and Dane?
Doing good, yeah. Exciting, action-packed day for us with the eruption in the night and kind of sneaking up on us a little bit. So we'll talk about that a little more.
Yeah, it really hasn't stopped since about, 4 a.m. for us, really.
Yeah,
pretty much.
It really kind of all goes back to that 4.3 earthquake we had
Mm-hmm.
a couple of days ago. Was when the whole thing all began. So we'll kind of go through all of it, try to cover the who, what, where, how, right, and why, all that stuff. And so let's start off with talk.
Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
Just seen in chat the eruption resumed. I'm trying to see what Tiggy's talking about. Lou, maybe.
Yeah, I'll help in chat. I'll catch up here. I'm on the other side of the island, so I may be a little laggy.
All right, so maybe what I'll start off by saying is that as the time as we started this update, we've been reviewing all the information that's come out over the last 12 hours or so from the USGS, which we understand is an intrusion that's been ongoing on Kilauea's East Rift. It did leak out a little bit of lava between 9 and 10 p.m. last night, presumably. That caused a big cloud of gas to come across the landscape. We know that the signals reportedly that the magma was still moving underground. And so in that case, it has been part of the prognosis that there is more expected to come on that. And so,
yeah, it's so we have an update, and the chat is correct. We have a resumption of the eruption. There's a new notice that just got emailed out. The eruption in the Middle East Rift Zone of Kilauea volcano resumed this evening, September 16th at approximately 6 p.m. The eruption is occurring within a closed and remote area of Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. The volcano alert level remains at watch, and the radiation cone remains at orange. This eruption does not pose an immediate threat to human life or infrastructure. So,
all right,
yeah,
so
restarted.
let's see if there's anything we can see in any of these cameras. The Makaopuhi camera is maybe not the best one, but this was like a pool, maybe, but still hard to see anything from this vantage point here on the live stream. So I guess we'll await if there's further information, or maybe there will be a remote camera set up at some point by the USGS, as they've done in previous eruptions. That takes a little bit of time. So this exact moment, I don't believe we have one. Have a view of that live eruption. So we'll get to that if we can, but let's just start off with visuals of what happened. Here is an image of that eruption, and maybe before I get fully into it here, I'll just say, Dane will be watching the chat, leading the discussion there, and we'll be pinging back and forth as needed, since we were getting live information fed into the update as we go here. All right, so let me switch our screen around here and our banners a little bit, and just share with you guys what we have going on here. All right, so here's the initial view. This is looking to the east or so. This is Nāpau crater. Pu'u'o is in the background under this cloud back over here. Makaopuhi crater and Kīlauea are back off in this direction of the image. And so what you're looking at here is this 2-segment fissure and 2 pads of lava that have erupted on Kilauea's Middle East Rift Zone, not far from the Nāpau campground, which is an area kind of through there, more or less, and not too far from the trail that goes to the Nāpau overlook, which is somewhere underneath this fume back in here as well. So that's what the first image will peek in, but maybe more useful is to show you guys a series of maps. So here is a thermal image overlaid on aerial imagery taken by the USGS today of the 2 lava pads just to the west of Nāpau crater. If you look at Nāpau crater along the center of its axis, like that, it's on that northern edge, on that northern strand of it, right? You can see that there are several strands of weaknesses, fault lines, and cracks along the East Rift Zone here. And in this particular area, it seems to be on that northern strand, which is the one that lines up more so with Makaopuhi crater, with Kīlauea being just north of it, right over here. So that's what that looks like from that perspective. We'll look at a different map. USGS has actually put out here the shapes of these pads of lava, along with a crack that emitted them. And we'll see from the images that there are further cracks that extend, that are fuming closer in this direction. Maybe some over here, hard to tell. But in total there, it seems like these are the ones that put out the lava. So if we can zoom that out, there is Nāpau crater, Makaopuhi crater. Zoom out some more. Mauna Ulu here is to the left. Pu'u'o is over here on the right. And up here is a summit caldera, Kilauea. And so there is the layout of where this eruption is located. You have to really zoom it all the way in to see the shape of the lava flow compared to the line right there. So this follows on an intrusion that began following a magnitude 4.3 earthquake. Here it is. It was noted to occur on September 14th. And you see it left some deformation visible as these rainbow fringes on the satellite radar change map. And what it's also showing is an injection of magma causing a dike that's actually, in this case, fairly shallow to create this butterfly pattern on the interferogram here. So an intrusion of magma into the East Rift here. And not only that, coming shallower than we've seen it come before, where we previously saw a single bullseye pattern of inflation from deeper in here. All right, so this was an image taken through September the 14th. That's that date, the same day the earthquake happened. And we can go through the seismographs here and show you that it took about an hour and a half following this earthquake for us to start having activity here at Makaopuhi. So however you think of it, there may have been magma still going into Makaopuhi to fuel earthquakes that have been ongoing in that area for the last month or so. But something seems to have opened or increased the flow in some way when an earthquake happened that facilitated more magma, more pressure coming to that area. That pressure seems to have allowed upward movement because of the accumulation in full from not only this one event, but previous intrusions as well that we had in August and July. And altogether, at the time of this image, by the 14th, it had reached this area around Makaopuhi. Now we know since then, the eruption happens further east, right over here. So it's likely that this dike is propagating to the east and at a rate that reached that area last night. So the question remains, will it keep propagating further? Or is it going to keep filling through here and just keep pushing its way apart further and further and wedge open this area? And from the reports that USGS is providing, the ground is moving massively in this area over here. They report that just one station here, Makaopuhi, since the 14th has moved 1.5 feet off the axis of the rift zone in that amount of time. That's a huge amount of movement. You can imagine how much volume it accommodates underground if there's any length to that area of opening. So here's the most recent big picture imagery up through that first day of the earthquake a couple of days ago, before this continued to move. So we have since then the earthquakes for the last week. So the big one is sitting right in there. And you can see the trail of earthquakes that have followed and increased and accumulated on the Middle East Rift as well as this Upper East Rift connector and the South Caldera that was building seismic counts prior to that 4.3 earthquake. So was building pressure here. We see this perhaps quasi break or increase in ability of the flow, and then pressure migrates across and intensifies the earthquakes that were happening in this area already. In the meantime, we still see the south flank active here. All of this is in response to the magma injecting in the East Rift. And so it is possible that we have renewed seismicity here in the south flank, including some potentially slightly bigger earthquakes here that play back and forth as the magma and the flank push each other back and forth. So that's the dynamic situation we find ourselves in today. Here's another map version of where that fissure sits compared to Nāpau, Makaopuhi, Mauna Ulu, and Pu'u'o. Hiaka, the roads. Here's a chain of craters road, which is currently closed by the National Park. But I can zoom it in and you can see here where that trail comes across this old lava flow And near the fissure, if you've been on that trail before, there's a split where it goes either to the overlook or towards the campground. And so it's not too far from that split in the trail, actually up trail from there. And so interesting area right there, which has had many eruptions in the past as well. And this is what we've talked about in our updates over the last month or so. The closest footprint to where this eruption actually happens now is this March 65 flow in blue right here. But it's also not too far off the October 1968 flow right there. And as well, February 69 comes and puts arms around that area, but it's not very close. Since that eruption that just happened was fairly small, it's actually closest in this March 65 area. And as you'll note from the imagery, it's in the middle of the forest. So it's actually more so right here in this piece of land that is not covered by flows in this map. And so that's the context of our eruption today. So how did it actually look? We have a few videos from USGS, so I will play these and just narrate over them. This one actually is annotated by the USGS, noting that eruption occurred on the 15th. They did the 2 fissure segments, flowed about 50 yards. They've updated that to about 90 yards or so, 90 meters, 100 yards or so. It's over. And that was detected from infrasound sensors that detected the emission of gas, consistent with gas emissions from the ground, which quite often, if it's coming out of the gas is coming out of the ground like that, it's bringing lava with it. And so that was the clue for them to renew their efforts to go out this morning and check up on events. But to be honest, there have been quite a number of USGS updates, quite frequent, and they've been quite on it for this whole episode of unrest. So that was the first view right there of the from USGS. I'll play here this slightly longer cut. And so now we're coming from the west. Makaopuhi is back to the right. Nāpau crater is over here coming into view, more or less in there. So there's our first fissure segment, pad of lava, and the second fissure segment and pad of lava as well. You can see there are further cracks that go towards Nāpau crater that do not have a pad of lava with them as well. But here, perhaps you can see it. It's a little bit of a darker area right through here. And we have, in this particular image, trade winds blowing from the northeast to southwest. Here you see the crater coming more clearly into view. The winds have been variable over the last 24 hours with some weather coming through the area. So a lot of heavy rain last night obscured view of this eruption, which is why there was no webcam views of this, despite the infrasound detection. And based on that, required a visual observation that they could not obtain by webcam through the rain last night. Interestingly, though, that weather did come from the south, and so it changed the wind direction briefly last night, just coincident when this eruption began. And that blew a lot of this fog into the volcano area, and a lot of the residents reporting very heavy fog smells, including myself having smelled it here. And that despite there being very, very heavy rain, looking at the national park gauges, I see it actually peaking at 0.7 inches per hour up there. In total, maybe 1.5 inches is what came out and accumulated. So last video here, this one's a little bit more zoomed in. I'll play this as well. So it's interesting. It was not a whole lot of lava, came out probably pretty quickly and short. You see a lot of these trees are still standing upright. Some are burned down. There's lava trees in this area, as we saw of many of the eruptions in the 1960s in the same area. But many of these trees are still upright, actually still today, right? So it just shows you how fast and how little lava came out in those areas right there. Here we are panning upwards. There's Nāpau in the background. Kīlauea eruption from the 2010s is back in here. And those are our video images that we have of the eruption there. And I'll keep moving just to keep this concise here for those of you trying to catch up on what's happening here in Kilauea. Some of the still imagery recaps similar to what you saw in the video there and here once again. And perhaps I can zoom in and you can see this area around there. Yeah, some of the area is recent flow with brush across it, and other areas more heavily vegetated, as you can see right through here. So another view as well there. And looking back through, you can see a lot of VOG still, volcanic fume, and still some weather lingering in the area as they photographed this area this morning, just as the weather cleared. So there you have it once again. This is the one area where you can see the most recent lava flow, and it goes something like that. And a little bit of an intersection right there where it comes out of the forest. So just straddling that boundary right there, and this might be the 1868 flow, I believe, or 1968 flow, I believe. All right, so that's what we had for the views from the web camera. This is the pool camera looking to the west. This, when the weather clears today, you can see right in the area right in here where that actually emerges. But here, as it comes through the night, you don't see anything except darkness, dark pixels, all that area. Nothing very convincing. I'll zoom it in so you can see a little better there. A little bit of fume visible here today. That was from Pu'u'o looking to the west. From Mauna Ulu looking to the east. You have Kananuiohamo in the foreground. Here's all that weather in the morning. Here's Kananuiohamo. The eruption is back right there. So if you look really closely, you can see a little bit of fume right in there. So let's take us into that spot. Just show you guys what there is to see. Very, very, very little, unless you need to look for it right there. And to pick it apart from all these clouds in the area, there it was. Would have been very difficult. And maybe I'll go one more time since it didn't quite circle it right when it popped up. There's only one frame in this imagery, but it's going to be right there. That was it. All right, so there was a gas that came out. We'll come to the VMAP VOG Measurement and Prediction Project from University of Hawaii Manoa. They put out this VOG forecast dashboard. And when they can, they'll update the emission rate. Right now, they're using the previous emission rate back in a rate of 75 tons per day, although the report from USGS earlier noted 300 tons per day. That was before the resumption of activity. So we'll see how that changes. But what this does inform us on is the direction of the weather blowing this volcanic emission. So here it is blowing southwest towards the zone of Pahala, Nālehu, Ocean View area. And depending if we have some other weather coming from other directions, what we saw last night was the wind actually changed and blew this up in this direction to the north as well. So these are the close by areas likely to be affected by the gases coming through. We'll look in a national park. Here you can see at the Volcano Art Center, SO2 meter at one point right there at 11 p.m., just after that puff of gas came out here that got registered on the SO2 meter in a national park. But that's the only one that's really very obvious. This one doesn't look like it was online, but a little bit registered, but it certainly was intense for it being through the rain. But I can imagine some of the sensors having trouble picking that up. Okay, so that's the air quality there. A couple of things that I could note is here's the precipitation numbers. So right there, it peaks at 10 p.m., 0.7 inches per hour. That's about half of that entire total for that period. So it kind of flashed up and through. And if you look at the same time, it was quite humid in the area. It's been quite humid all week. But this temperature, this right here, wind speed, wind direction. So this is the azimuth on the compass where it's coming from. And here you see this is a regular trade wind pattern when it's coming from the northeast. And when it does these spikes is when it's switching to the Kona winds. And so we had one of those a couple days ago, but also we had one of these 10 p.m. last night. So that's what brought all that fog from the south coming back to the north. The thought does occur, like with all that gas coming to the air, could it have possibly seeded some rain? What actually caused this rain? And so here I've pulled the radar just to satisfy, but there's a huge band of moisture coming from way offshore, comes against the island, switches across it, hits the mountains, flares up more so in Honoka'a, but also here in the area of Kilauea as well. So it seems like it was largely an external event that just happened to be coincident with this eruption at the same time in this particular case. All right, so we'll move on to the monitoring data. So here are the last 48-hour seismographs. And here I've put up several areas. This is the East Rift right here. Like we can look at the same patterns on the summit as well. But for example, at Pu'o, what you can see here, this is about 4 p.m., 4:30 p.m. on the evening of the 14th. And there is that magnitude 4.3 earthquake. That lasted, shaking the instrument for many seconds before it finally came down below the maximum threshold and tailed off here. And there is an hour-and-a-half gap that followed it before we have intense tremor that begins here and that evening of the 14th. That indicates the resumption of flow of magma within Kilauea's plumbing system. You see that backed off as well. You have lots of these micro earthquakes also happening, all stacked on each other as well. So it's hard to tell exactly what's what. But you see that all quiets off, relatively speaking, from the intense levels it had been by around midnight. We continue having micro earthquake activities. Some of these may not register fully on the USGS maps. Those have to be fully located. So maybe one of these might be located, but one of these might not. So when you start counting all the little ones, you can clearly see that the ground is still stressed and cracking and things are still happening, just not exactly in the same way. Right? So we see that activity continuing all through here. And it's actually this very, very subtle signal right in here. That's a very slight increase in the background level. Right through here, it looks like a flat line. And right through here, it starts getting a little wiggly. And that's the difference in the tremor that we saw with the gas coming out of these cracks. So essentially, this is all the ground cracking after that flow of magma coming through and ground cracking as well. And it was basically found a pathway out without a whole lot of commotion, really, which is what it was basically just leaked out, right, through a weak spot there on the rift zone. So that pattern is pretty typical. This happens to be the Pu'o station, but I can go up the rift here, a little bit more subdued patterns, but there's at magnitude 4.3, and then different patterns of magma, tremor, and earthquakes. This is Kanakakoi station, Byron's Ledge, the Sand Hill station as well, Nahuku. Right, so all the summit stations, or some of them are not putting through good data or are missing data. But we also can go further down the rift and look down at Kupainaha, Jonica, down at Highway 130. See, Highway 130 picks up much more strongly the 4.3 earthquake, but is not picking up nearly the level of tremor because it's much further down the rift zone and not picking up that pulsing of the vibration of the magma moving through there. So it's far enough away, it's not picking that up, right? Getting closer to Jonica, you're picking it up a little bit more so, and Kupainaha even more so. So you see it's really the closer to the summit you get, and in fact to this Makaopuhi area in particular that you seem to have this signal, right? So that's likely the ground breaking upwards through there and leading to this eruption happening. So those are the seismic signals. We can go to what it looks like on tilt. And let me just reload this to see we have the most current data as we speak right now. And the reason we were fairly confident that something else had to come is because if you looked at the tilt meter here, over the last 2 days, it has been fairly steadily going down. And despite that eruption coming and going last evening, there was no change in the pattern of magma draining from the summit. So this is the last 2 days. You can see it's dropped down from 15 to almost negative 15. So we're looking at between 25 microradians or more of change in a couple of days. So zooming it out to the last week, here is that magnitude 4.3 earthquake with that drop that went down following the previous changes. For the last month, it looks even more dramatic. There it is coming down right there compared to the previous buildup that had lasted much of the last month. And going through other stations, we see that same pattern reflected at Kilauea Iki. That's pretty normal. The Sand Hill station has always been an interesting one because it has one signal pointing to the South Caldera Reservoir, which also is dropping precipitously on this green line, as well as a Halemamau signal reflected in the blue right there. And on the East Rift at the Escape Road, we saw this was another one of our major intrusions that occurred in August. We've had minor adjustments occur since then. We saw another one of those minor adjustments following the 4.3 and then fairly stable actually since then, although still moving a bit. Pu'u'o is showing much more intense swings. So here, this green line is the one that points west towards Makaopuhi Reservoir. That's the one that was moving the most. And here you can see that the 4.3 earthquake is that little wiggle right there. And then following that, we see that area to the west essentially deflating from the pool area, likely as that big pimple of magma is burst up to the surface, is basically allows it to reduce. And now magma is coming back into that area, and it's repressurizing and reswelling it up from the west and resuming that trend. So this blue line is the one that points to the rift zone, and this is the one that's interesting. It's not quite clear exactly right here what this double pulse is. There was some heavy rainfall in the area. I'm not sure that is attributable to this signal, but it's in the middle here somewhere. We're not looking at very many microradians. That's 2 right there compared to previous signals. So that possibly could be a slight rainfall effect. But it does seem like there was some pulse that occurred in the rift zone. So the big question now moving forward is tracking this particular station at POC on the tilt to see if we see an increase in this blue line. That would mean that magma has reached this area underneath Pu'u'o and is able to now cause it to increase from the axis of the rift zone. So this by itself is not convincing yet. It could be the start of something, but by itself, not yet. And that is, we're seeing more so as inflation from the west Makaopuhi area. And this is one of the more telling signals we have. Further down the rift at Jonica, we only see the earthquake spike and then nothing wiggling past that, really. So it's really contained Pu'u'o and west so far. Yeah, and that's what we have for the tilt. The USGS, as I mentioned, has had quite a number of updates, and it sounds like I need to refresh this once again, and we'll just do it like this. We go to the HBO, and here's our newest notice that was out at 7:46 p.m. The eruption in the Middle East rift zone of Kilauea resumed this evening at approximately 6 p.m., occurring within the closed remote area of the national park. The volcano alert level for ground-based hazards remains at watch, and aviation code remains at orange at this time. It does not pose a threat to human life or infrastructure. The chain of craters road is closed, is downslope and downwind of the fissures. Residents in nearby areas may experience volcanic gas emissions related to this activity, which may wax and wane over the coming days. The activity is currently restricted to the Middle East rift zone. Rates of seismicity and ground information beneath the Lower East rift zone and the Southwest rift zone both remain low. Intrusion has been ongoing in the area since September 14th, with a very small eruption occurring west of Nāpau on the evening of the 15th, where it resumed this evening. They note activity visible in a PW camera. Let's check that out and see if we can.
Phil, we have a time lapse of this eruption start. You're not going to see anything on there right now, but we have a time lapse if you want to show that now.
Okay, you have it.
Yeah, you ready?
Yeah.
Here we go. So it starts out, I just want to show some frames before it restarted. And you can see the little bit of gas there from that the fissure coming out, but then it gets caked in, right? Lots of low-hanging clouds and gas, and can't see. Getting to that point, and it should be going at this point. It should be erupting, but you can't see it. But now you can, right? And you can see it up on the hill there glowing. So we do get several good frames of this, the eruption start from a long ways away, at night. But we can see it at least, and then it's going to get kicked in again, and we can't see it again. And we haven't been able to see it since.
Yeah, it is raining up here currently now in the area. So yeah, maybe kind of sucked in, but yeah, I'm sure we'll have some people watching and can pick out those good frames for us for our next update on this.
Yeah, but at least we got something. I wanted to be like, we got to be able to see it. Like, we have to be. We didn't miss this one, right? Like, not entirely. And we do have a little bit of a sequence there to show. So that is cool.
That's nice. Yeah. Right. So yeah. So that's the resumption of activity right there. Monitoring continues. There have been numerous eruptions in the Middle East rift zone in the 60s and 70s. And if you watched our series, if you haven't, we can sum it up this way. There was essentially 9 eruptions in that decade of time. The first ones were largely intrusions with very little lava leaking out. over the course of the first several years. Eventually, they build up to larger eruptions that kind of will pave bigger flows along the rift zone itself, but none of those flows are getting large enough to reach the ocean. And eventually, after some time of eruptions happening over top of each other, one after the other in similar areas, it will lead up to a longer lasting eruption like Mauna Ulu that began in 1969 and went on for 4.5 years, 5 years. So similarly, the Pu'u'u eruption, another long lasting eruption, but it's not like we're going to go from nothing to a 35-year eruption from scratch. At least that seems unlikely to me, given the pattern we saw in the 60s of the resumption. And so this one actually seems to follow that same pattern, similar to also what was seen in 2011 with the Father's Day intrusion, where it was more an intrusion with a little bit of lava leaking out than it was an eruption, but technically also an eruption with a little bit of lava coming out. So that was a 7 p.m. USGS update. The one previous to that was 5 p.m., just showing how diligent they're being. At this point, they had noted that there was still renewed episode of intense arrest or eruption possible with little warning, because signals have not dissipated following last night's eruption. Right? So that's about the signal of it there. I can note the rates of ground information. Let's summarize the highlights here. Over 8 inches of movement over the last, what does it say here? Several stations in the Middle East Rift. The largest station, the Makaopuhi, which experienced 1.8 feet of south-southwest motion. 54 centimeters, half a meter, since September 14th. So there's where you see the combination of large GPS displacements and modest tilt rates suggests much of the deformation is a result of magma entering a storage region several miles below the surface. That's that big storage area there. And then now it has a little leaking pathway coming up too. And they note that eruption that occurred last night, the detection of infrasound instruments signals typical of gas or steam venting between 9 and 10 p.m. approximately. And then finding this morning the 2 lava pads from fissure segments extending about 525 yards in total, 480 meters, and reaching 90 meters or 100 yards away from the vents, covering about 4 acres in total, 2 hectares. That total volume is not very large, 25,000 cubic yards or 20,000 cubic meters, roughly equivalent to 8 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So if we go by Olympic-sized swimming pools, we can imagine it. By dump trucks, it might seem like a lot. But for comparison, I will let you know that the previous eruption we had about 1 year ago in September 2023 at the summit of Kilauea put out more than 18 million cubic meters compared to 20,000 here. So in comparison, this eruption was really tiny. They noted that the degassing of sulfur dioxide was at 300 plus or minus 50, measured by field crews between 11:30 and 1:30 p.m. today. That was before resumption. And so the rates are likely fluctuating higher and lower as well. And so that is the likely most likely impact on people is the gas. Prior to that, they noted the at 11:30, changing the alert level or noting here the alert level volcanic activity notice, noting the eruption had actually happened, where it had happened near the campsite, noting the events, the accuracy they knew at that point in time, and noting as well here, this is one I wanted to highlight, the additional ground cracking and outbreaks of lava around active fissures are possible at any time, or existing fissures can be reactivated. So this was something they called out early on here, and in fact, they've been pretty good at noting what some possibilities of what might happen could be as they give their updates. So I'll keep rolling it back here just to not bog us down too far here, but 9:22 a.m. today was another update that came out when they were noting the update of the aviation code and ground level as well. Noting all the cracking, all that report as well. Summarizing that unrest. I'll keep going further back here because prior to that, at 12:23 a.m. this morning, is when they actually put the alert up as well. And at that point in time, they noted that strong rainfall in the area was complicating interpretation. In 2007, an intrusion orbited a very small pad of lava, approximately the size of half a football field, So it's possible that a similarly small eruption could take place without detection in these conditions. So they knew that the signals were largely there. They just didn't have visual confirmation at the time, and had to wait for that this morning as well. So no thermal anomalies popped up on a satellite, largely because of all that heavy rain as well. And webcams, as you saw, are not catching the activity if there's some rain clouds in between. It's a little bit too far from the camera. So yeah, and that follows. I'll go back and just highlight a little bit more. So this is the corresponding aviation notice here. But going back to Sunday, they noted that there was a dramatic increase in activity in the Middle East Rift Zone northwest of Makaopuhi that had followed the 4.3 earthquake that occurred, right? So all of this suggested that there could be deformation as well, right? They noted deformation recorded at Escape Road and Pool oil altimeters was occurring, right? That it was likely an intrusion. Suggests a dike was in place in the region northwest of Makaopuhi crater, right? That the dike was being in place even as early as the 14th and 15th. They were already aware of that. So you can see there's been quite a lot of updates put out. The one prior to that was the one put out Saturday evening that followed the step up in that earthquake intensity. And that's the one that followed the update at 5 p.m. yesterday, or on Saturday, I should say, that followed the magnitude 4.3 earthquake itself. So we see lots of updates and a lot of days we've been following along. There's been quite a lot going on. And here's the most recent regular normal update back to Saturday morning. So that is the updates there, and I'm showing you guys the map here. So to round it off, just to show you guys what activity is currently right now, in the last 2 hours, only 7 earthquakes. If we have an open vent, that's expected for earthquakes to go down, but that's where the earthquakes are relative to the vent. I'll circle it once again right there, and then turn on the last 2 days. So you can see that it was really kind of in that southern part of the cloud of seismicity that we have the actual crack to the surface emerge right here. Right, that's the last 2 days. You can see there's been more so around Makaopuhi than so at the Upper East Rift of Caldera. But if we go to the last 2 weeks, then we pick up that track, including that magnitude 4.3 as well. Here, going by time, the most recent earthquake 1.8 that occurred looks like about 10 minutes ago or so, and 2.3 a little bit further before that. So still ongoing in this area, slowing down, as you can see. If I go to the largest, you can see more clearly where that 4.3 occurred exactly right here on that southern edge of the caldera. This is that southernmost master caldera fault right here. So at a depth of 0.2 miles, so just below sea level, that master structure somewhere in there, allowing that pathway to open up to the Middle East Rift. So that's all the data we have. It is worth noting that the China Craters Road was noted temporarily closed due to activity this morning prior to the confirmation of lava having been erupted. And then following that confirmation, they reissued the alert that the China Craters Road remained closed following the short eruption on the Middle East Rift there. So they are noting additional areas remain closed, and so you'll just have to follow the park guidance to when they determine when they can reopen it and where that will be safe. So that is the current status that we have here. All right, that is it. I'm not keep it as short as I wanted, but that is how long it took to get through everything here.
Well, there was a little bit of a surprise when we were, setting up the time frames for this whole stream, and then, it erupted. It's erupting again. So have fun with that, guys.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that's the interesting thing there to try to react here and get enough information that's coherent together for you guys, that's going to be accurate and relevant and in context, and still somewhat timely, and trying to keep on that thing still developing.
Busy day. Of course, there was a last little curveball thrown in. Why wouldn't there have been? But yeah, good job, Phil. And thanks, Tiggy. Thanks, everybody in chat for, as soon as we jumped in, being like, it's erupting again. It's like, okay, hold on. Why is chat yelling at me? They're right. Lou, you're muted. Lou, I see you're talking, but you're muted.
Oh, am I? No, I'm
You're
live.
back.
Yeah. I said nobody could message us 20, 30 minutes before we went live. They just waited till the live stream started up.
Take what we can
We're
get.
not trying.
Yeah. All right.
All right,
well,
you
yeah,
guys.
that's for a special presentation.
So yeah, mahalo Tigi, mahalo all you guys, and yeah, we are a nonprofit. We're doing this because we realize that people, especially in Lower East Rift, have trauma and triggered from this. So it is possible that the cracks leak lava out a little bit further down from where they are now, but it's a long process to get lava back down the rift usually. So excuse me. So for now, there's no increased threat to the people in Lower East Rift, and this is part of that expected process of the reinjection of magma in the rift zone. So we expect to have more of these patterns, and we might be living with this kind of activity for obviously the rest of this eruption, but for more months and years to come as well. So that's all we have today. We obviously will have more to share as eruption is continuing. Go ahead, Dane.
One last thing is that was we play around with that over under poll on the eruption date, and we selected sometime in mid-October. Man, that under came in hot and heavy. We've had 2 eruptions. I mean, you don't get paid twice, but you don't get paid. But hey, it was a good, whoever took the under, good job on that. I think you were the minority on that one, and the under usually gets, it takes the L on that. So it was good to see them come in once.
All right. So, all right, you guys. Lou, you gonna head us out of here?
Yeah, let me get on over there. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. HVERI, we are the Hawaiian Volcano Education and Resilience Institute. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. You can donate to us at hveri.org/donate. Appreciate everybody's support. And we can go ahead, and I think the credits are ready to roll. And yeah, we're good. Hit them. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, Dane, Lou, Philip from HVERI. Hello, everyone.